Sunday, December 31st, 2023, 11:41 p.m. I was 21 and working the New Year's Eve rush on a delivery app because the surge pay looked too good to ignore. Manhattan was loud in that specific end-of-year way, people spilling out of bars, taxis laying on horns, cold air full of laughter and impatience. I kept telling myself I'd do a few more orders, stack the bonuses, then go home and let the night end without me. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Stacked delivery pings. Surge notice. A map that kept redrawing itself as if the city was shifting under my wheels. By the time I rolled up to a high-rise off West 32nd in Koreatown, my gloves were damp and my boots were slick from slush. Inside the lobby, it felt like a different world. Warm, over-perfumed, too clean. Confetti was stuck to the wet rubber mats near the elevators, and somebody's glitter trailed like breadcrumbs across the marble. A lobby TV showed Times Square on mute. Bright lights, crowds packed, shoulder to shoulder, the ball waiting to drop. Behind the security desk, a bored doorman scrolled his phone with one hand and tapped a little brass desk bell absent-mindedly with the other, like he was keeping time. I checked my order again while the elevator chimed. "Door closing," the recorded voice said, calm and certain. My delivery instructions were weirdly specific. Leave at door, do not knock, text only. No Happy New Year, no thank you, just that. I shrugged it off. People were hosting parties, babies sleeping, roommates passed out. It was New Year's Eve. Everyone had a reason to be particular. The elevator took me up, and when the doors opened, the hallway smelled like fried food and cologne layered together, heavy and lingering. The carpet was spotless. The lighting was bright but somehow flat, like it erased shadows instead of making them. I walked out, following the numbers on the doors like I always did, expecting noise, music, shouting, maybe a drunk person laughing too loud. But the corridor was strangely quiet. At first, I told myself the quiet was a relief. Maybe this floor just wasn't a party floor. Maybe everyone was out. Maybe the thick doors did their job. I kept moving, phone in my hand, bag warm against my hip, looking for the unit number the app showed. Then I noticed the first wrong thing. The door plaques didn't line up the way they should have. The app had me delivering to a number that should have been on the left, but the left side skipped it completely. When I looked across the hall, the same number appeared again, twice, on two different doors, like a printing mistake that nobody bothered to fix. I stopped and zoomed the app. The pin floated, then snapped to a new spot like it was correcting itself. My screen gave a tiny recalculation wiggle, and suddenly it said I was standing closer to the stairwell than I actually was. I blamed GPS drift. Old buildings, concrete, bad signal, that was rational. Tried to calm my brain down the way I always did on late shifts. It was New Year's Eve. I was tired. My mind was hunting for something to be nervous about because the night already felt charged. That's when the stairwell door opened. A man stepped out like he'd been leaning against it on the other side. Not stumbling drunk, not running, just appearing. Hands in his pockets, hood up, face half-shadowed by the overhead light. He looked at me and smiled in a way that didn't match his eyes. "Who you delivering to?" he asked, like it was casual, like we were neighbors. I gave the shortest answer I could, just the unit number. No name, no extra details. I tried to move past him without making it a thing, but he angled his body slightly, not blocking me outright, just making me choose how close I wanted to pass. "Yeah," he said softly, like he already knew. "Thought so." I told myself he lived here. I told myself he was waiting for someone. I told myself my nerves were doing that late-night exaggeration thing. Then I noticed there was no sound at all behind any door. No TV, no footsteps, no voices, no bass thumping. Not even a sink running. Just that hallway holding its breath with me inside it. I walked a little faster, pretending confidence. I found the door that matched the app, and it was one of the duplicate numbers. The plaque looked slightly newer than the others, like it had been replaced recently. The peephole was dark. No light leaked from the frame, no shadow moved beneath it. I remembered the instructions, do not knock, so I texted through the app's relay, "Here with your order," leaving it at the door. I crouched to set the bag down. Behind me, the stairwell door clicked. Not a slam, not the heavy swing of someone leaving. A clean, deliberate latch sound, like someone had pulled it shut from the inside. My skin tightened across my shoulders. I stood up slowly and looked back. The man was closer than he should have been, not right on me, just close enough that the distance felt measured. I took 2 steps toward the elevator area, deciding I'd bail and let the customer deal with their own mystery food. My phone vibrated again. Another order, another surge notice. The normal chaos of the app trying to pretend everything was fine. I pressed the elevator call button. It lit up, bright, normal. Nothing happened, no chime, no mechanical hum, no arrival indicator. I pressed again. The light stayed on, like it was listening, but the system didn't respond. The panel felt dead behind the glow, like a toy with batteries removed. I told myself it was a temporary lockout. New Year's Eve security. Maybe the building was restricting elevator calls without a fob. Reasonable, logical. Then my map pin re-centered again. Hard snapping to the stairwell as if I was standing right at that door. My location dot hovered for a second, then settled there like a decision had been made for me. The man spoke again, quieter this time. "Just leave it," he said. "You can go." It wasn't the words that got me, it was the certainty, like he was giving me instructions that weren't his to give. I shifted sideways, putting the hallway's brighter downlight between us. I wanted visibility. I wanted cameras. I wanted any sense that the building had eyes on this floor, even if it didn't feel like it. And then a new message popped up on my phone. Not from the app relay, a raw number. No masked contact, no order thread. "Happy New Year," it read. The time on my screen flipped to 11:59 p.m. My throat went dry. There was only one way someone could be texting me directly like that, and it wasn't through the delivery app. They would need my real number, or they would need my phone. I backed up, slowly at first, then faster when the man moved. He didn't chase. He matched. He kept the same distance, like he was trying not to trigger a sprint too early. I turned and headed toward the end of the corridor, where I'd seen an exit sign earlier. A small service door that looked like it led to another stairwell. My shoes squeaked on the clean carpet. The hallway felt longer than it had a minute ago. I reached the door and pushed. Locked. I twisted the handle harder. Nothing. Behind me, the stairwell latch clicked again, this time from the other side of the hall. The man had drifted back toward it like it was his home base. In that moment, the pattern became simple and brutal. This wasn't random. The quiet, the duplicate number, the dead elevator, the pin snapping to the stairwell, the text from outside the app. It all pointed in one direction. I was being guided, placed, timed. So, I did the only smart thing I could think of without waiting for my courage to show up. I turned and walked, fast, loud, deliberate, back toward where I'd come from, aiming for the lobby cameras and the one person I'd seen who belonged to the building. The hallway lights flickered once, just a quick stutter that made my shadow jump. Somewhere far below, through the building's bones, I heard the muffled roar of people counting down in Times Square like the city was breathing in. 10, 9. The stairwell door behind me slammed open so hard it hit the wall. I didn't turn all the way, but I saw motion in the corner of my eye. Fast now, committed. The man lunged, reaching not for my arm, not for my bag, for my phone. I jerked away and threw the delivery bag at him on instinct. It hit his chest and exploded with the soft thud of food containers, enough to stall him for half a second. 8. 7. I grabbed the nearest red pull station mounted on the wall, something I'd walked past without really seeing, and yanked. The alarm detonated the silence. A harsh electric siren, strobing lights, a sudden sense of the building waking up angry. 6, 5. Doors released with clicks and pops, magnetic locks letting go. Somewhere, an intercom chirped. The hallway filled with a new kind of sound. Systems responding, cameras switching, people noticing. I ran, hard. 4, 3. I hit the stairwell door at the end and it opened this time. I took the steps, 2 at a time, lungs burning, the alarm chasing me down like a second threat. 2, 1. Above the siren, I heard shouting echo in the stairwell, someone moving, someone following. Then the heavy slam of another door, and then Happy New Year. I burst back into the lobby like I'd been launched. The doorman looked up from his phone for the first time all night, eyes wide, posture changing instantly. The security desk bell shook from the vibration of the alarm. On the lobby TV, Times Square erupted in confetti on mute, like it was mocking me. I didn't try to explain everything at once. I just pointed upward and said, "Someone's up there." He tried to take my phone. My voice didn't sound like mine. The doorman pulled me behind the desk, put himself between me and the elevators and spoke into a radio I hadn't seen before. He kept his eyes on the camera monitors like he was trying to catch a face. Police didn't appear like magic. It still took long minutes where my hands wouldn't stop shaking and the alarm kept screaming. When officers finally arrived, they went upstairs. They came back with nothing useful. No man in the hall, no sign of a struggle, no delivery bag, like the floor had been reset. The next day, when I opened the app, that address on West 32nd was gone from the map, like it had never been there at all. Before we get into the next story, if you're new here, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next upload. And if you enjoyed these stories, please do like, comment, and share. Tuesday, December 31st, 2024, 1:18 a.m. I was 35, and I'd been bartending events long enough to know New Year's Eve was never just another shift. It was always louder, messier, and somehow more exhausting than the money made it worth. That night, I was closing a rented venue on the south side, Riverside Warehouse Venue near Cermak Road. It was one of those industrial spaces that got dressed up for parties. Black drapes, rented up lighting, a DJ booth jammed into a corner, and a bar slapped together out of plywood and confidence. By the time the last guests trickled out, the place looked like a celebration had melted. Champagne had spilled everywhere and dried sticky, so every step felt like my shoes were peeling off the floor. There was a constant crunch underfoot from glass that wasn't quite cleaned up yet. Coat check tickets littered the concrete like pale little receipts no one would ever claim. My hands were stained with stamp ink from wrist checks, and wristband scraps clung to the trash like shed skin. The DJ had packed up most of his gear, but the LED panels on the booth still glowed faintly, and a low bass hum lingered in the air like the building didn't want to go quiet every few seconds. the emergency exit signs buzzed with that thin electrical whine you only notice when the music stops. A cleaning cart sat near the back hallway, stacked with industrial trash bags, and the whole place smelled like lemon disinfectant trying to cover up sweat, alcohol, and fried food from the catering trays. It was supposed to be simple. Count tips, wipe down, lock up, get out. The venue manager, woman named Denise, did one last walkthrough with a clipboard and said, casual, as if she was reminding me about trash pickup, "Security will walk you out." I looked around. It was just me, Denise, and one other staffer, my coworker Marco, rolling up bar mats. "Security?" I asked, half laughing. Denise didn't laugh back. She just nodded toward the back hallway like it was already handled. A guy in a black jacket came out of that hallway a minute later. Not a uniform, just black on black, like he wanted to blend into the walls. He walked straight up to the bar, glanced at the mess, and then asked me for my full name. "For the incident log," he said. I actually paused with a stack of plastic cups in my hands. "What incident?" He didn't answer the question. He just waited, like the log mattered more than my confusion. My first rational thought was that there had been a fight earlier and I'd missed it. New Year's Eve crowds were unpredictable. Maybe someone slipped and threatened a lawsuit. Maybe it was a paperwork thing. I gave him my first name only. He looked at me like it wasn't enough. Denise's heels clicked across the concrete behind him. "Just cooperate," she said too quickly. That was the second rational explanation I offered myself. Maybe the venue had been fined before and they were paranoid now. Maybe their security was just a contractor trying to look official. Then I heard the sound that didn't fit. From the back hallway, deeper than the bathrooms, deeper than the storage closet, came a heavy bolt, sliding. Not the light clack of a latch. A thick, metal-on-metal shunk that sounded like something designed to keep people in. I stared toward the hallway entrance. The security guy didn't even flinch. Marco, always the brave one, said he was going to the restroom before we left. He disappeared down the same hall and I went back to wiping the bar, telling myself the bolt was a loading bay lock, a maintenance door, anything normal. A minute passed, then 2. Marco didn't come back. I heard his phone ring, muffled, persistent, behind a closed door. I called his name once, quiet, then louder, no answer. The security guy turned his head slightly, like he was listening for my voice more than for Marco's. "Front's unsafe," he said. "You'll go out the loading dock." "Unsafe how?" I asked. He gave me a small smile, like the question was cute. "Just procedure." And suddenly, the venue felt less like a room I worked in, and more like a building deciding where I was, allowed to stand. I didn't want to go toward the loading dock. The front entrance led to a lit street and a line of rideshares. The loading dock led to darkness, trucks, and blind corners. But Denise was already moving us that direction, steering with her clipboard like it was a map. The security guy stayed close enough that I could smell his cologne cut through the disinfectant. As we approached the dock corridor, the emergency exit signs buzzed louder, or maybe my attention just got sharper. The bass hum from the DJ booth felt farther away, like we were leaving the party part of the building and entering the warehouse part that didn't care if anyone screamed. I tried one more time. Marco's still back there, his phone's ringing. Denise didn't stop walking. "He'll meet us," she said, without looking at me. That was wrong. Detail number 1, people didn't say he'll meet us when someone had vanished behind a closed door. At the loading dock, the overhead, lights flickered. 2 quick stutters, then stabilized. A van was backed in too close. almost kissing the dock edge, blocking the open space where you'd normally walk out comfortably. Its engine wasn't running, but it looked recently parked, like it hadn't cooled down yet. Wrong detail number 2. I reached into my pocket for my car keys out of a habit and felt nothing. I checked my apron, then my bag, then the bar tray where I always toss them without thinking. Gone. My stomach tightened. I hadn't left the bar except to follow them. I hadn't set my keys anywhere else. I knew that like I knew my own name. Wrong detail number 3. The security guy noticed me patting myself down and said, too casually, "You'll get them after." After what? I asked. No answer. Just that slight smile again. I made a decision in the middle of my fear. I wasn't going to let them keep moving me deeper. I wasn't going to walk past that van. I wasn't going to step into the one spot with the least visibility. So I did the one thing I'd learned from late-night work in bad neighborhoods. Make it official and make it loud. I slipped behind a row of stacked kegs near the side wall, crouched low where the shadows pooled, and dialed 911. My hands shook so hard my screen blurred, but I hit speaker and kept my voice steady. "I'm at Riverside Warehouse Venue near Cermak," I said. "I'm staff. The exits are being locked and my coworker isn't responding. I need police." The security guy's head snapped toward the sound. His posture changed, not angry, but alert, like I'd just broken the script. I didn't wait for him to talk me down. I shoved my shoulder into a metal rack next to the kegs and tipped it hard. The crash was vicious. Metal on concrete. Loud enough to echo down the dock corridor and bounce off the ceiling. Denise shouted my name, sharp, furious. The security guy moved fast now, radio in hand. It crackled once, and in the static, I heard something that made my blood go cold. My own voice. A sentence I'd said earlier, something small, something normal, played back at me through that radio like it had been recorded. Same tone, same tired cadence. It wasn't a dispatcher, it wasn't an echo. It was me. And that was the moment the pattern became clear. This wasn't security. This was control. Names, logs, redirects, missing keys, locked doors. A van positioned like a mouth waiting to close. They weren't walking me out. They were moving me somewhere. Footsteps rushed toward the kegs, more than one set. 2 guards, at least. I stayed low, breathing through my nose so I wouldn't cough on the disinfectant smell. The first guard rounded the corner and I saw his shoes stop inches from my hiding spot. I didn't move. My muscles locked. Then Denise's voice cut through, tight and impatient. "She's here, she's here." That did it. My fear turned into action. I crawled out the opposite side of the keg, stack, scraping my knee on concrete, and bolted down a narrow aisle between storage cages. My shoes slid on dried champagne. I caught myself on a post and kept going. A hand hit the keg stack behind me. Another rack rattled. I heard a curse. I reached a side door with a panic bar, an emergency exit I'd walked past earlier without thinking. I slammed my palm into it. For a half second, nothing happened. Then the bar gave. The door burst open and freezing Chicago air punched the breath out of me. The alarm screamed instantly, louder than the one inside the corridor, and I ran into the night like the sound could protect me. Behind me, I heard a door slam. Fast footsteps. Then, abruptly, they stopped. As if someone decided chasing me outside was a risk they didn't want on camera. I hit the curb, waving both arms like a maniac until a rideshare slowed down. I didn't even ask questions. I yanked the back door open and said, "Please, just pull up and keep the doors locked." My whole body shook while we sat there under a streetlight waiting. When police arrived, they didn't treat it like a misunderstanding. They went in with purpose, flashlights out, hands near their belts. They searched the venue, the loading dock, the bathrooms, the back hallway. They didn't find anyone who matched Denise's security, and Denise suddenly had a story about contractors leaving early. They found my keys later, in a kitchen prep bin, under plastic wrap, like someone had tossed them there in a hurry. Marco finally turned up outside, pale and sweating, insisting he'd been in the restroom and didn't hear his phone. He looked genuinely confused when I asked him about the locked door and the ringing. At 3:02 a.m., my phone lit up with a text from Marco's number. "Did we meet before tonight?" He swore he never sent it, and I believed him, because his hands were still shaking when he said it. Wednesday, January 1st, 2025, 12:07 a.m. I was 27 and driving rideshare because New Year's Eve paid better than Pride ever did. Surge pricing meant you could make in a few hours what normally took a full weekend, and I'd told myself I'd grind until the fireworks died out, then go home and sleep for a day. San Antonio was chaos downtown. I was circling the Riverwalk pickup lane near the Nueva Street Bridge, inching forward with 100 other cars that all looked like they'd been dragged into the same bottleneck. People spilled off sidewalks in glitter and cheap heels, yelling over each other, laughing too hard, moving like the city belonged to them for the night. My phone sat in a mount on the dash, but the mount kept shaking from the bass pounding out of a nearby street party. Every time a song dropped, my whole steering wheel vibrated slightly, like the sound had weight. The app had a bright surge banner across the top, and the pickup pin kept sliding around like it was allergic to staying put. My back seat still had confetti and glitter from earlier riders, little reflective pieces that caught the streetlights and made the car look like it was perpetually mid-celebration. The air inside smelled like old air freshener, fighting a losing war against cheap champagne and sweat that drifted in through the cracked window every time the crowd surged closer. I kept my dashcam running no matter what. The red recording dot was always there, along with the timestamp in the corner. It made me feel like the night had rules. Fireworks started popping somewhere down by the water, sharp cracks that echoed between buildings, then rolled into a constant thunder that made it hard to tell what was a celebration and what was a problem. That's when I got the request. Passenger name, Lena. She had the little, quiet rider badge. Her message said, "I'm in a silver dress." I glanced in the rearview mirror, scanning the curb through bodies and smoke and sparkle, and eased toward the moving pin, trying to line myself up in the one spot the app insisted was correct. I didn't even have time to stop fully before my rear passenger door opened. A man slid in, fast, confident, like it was his car. He was maybe mid-30s, wearing a dark jacket that didn't match the party energy outside. He shut the door behind him before I could reach for the lock button. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "You Lena?" He didn't look at me. He angled his face toward the window, jaw set like he was watching something outside. "I'm with Lena," he said. "Just start driving. She'll meet us up ahead." That was the first moment my brain tried to smooth it over. New Year's Eve was messy. Friends got separated, phones died, people used strangers' cars as landmarks. Maybe Lena was waving somewhere and I just couldn't see her through the bodies. I glanced at my phone mount. The pickup pin was still skating around. The app timer was ticking. Fireworks cracked again and the sound bounced off the concrete like a physical push. "Where up ahead?" I asked. "Just pull forward," he said, impatient but quiet. "She's in a silver dress. You'll see her." Second rationalization. Maybe he was drunk and panicky, trying to keep the ride from canceling. People did dumb things when they thought money was on the line. I'd had passengers jump in the wrong car a dozen times and laugh it off. I reached down and hit the lock button anyway. The lock didn't click. I tried again. Nothing. The dash showed the doors were open and latched for half a second, then it cleared. It was like the car couldn't decide whether it had control. Wrong detail number 1. Then the app screen flashed and the ride disappeared. A small notification popped up. Ride canceled. Wrong detail number 2. The man didn't move. Most people would immediately say, "Oh, my bad," and get out. He stayed seated, calm, like the cancellation was part of the plan. I turned, slightly in my seat. "The ride canceled. I need you to step out." He finally looked toward the dashcam, not at me, at the lens. "Is that real?" he asked. Wrong detail number 3. The question hit me harder than it should have. It wasn't curiosity. It sounded like a checklist item. He lifted his hand toward the camera without touching it, hovering close enough that my skin prickled. "You don't want trouble tonight," he said, voice still controlled. "Just drive." Fireworks kept going, loud enough to cover anything that didn't belong. My phone mount jittered with every bass hit from the street party. Outside, people were hugging and yelling, "Happy New Year," like the whole world was safe for 1 minute. Inside my car, everything narrowed to small, specific problems. I tried the locks again. This time, they clicked, late, delayed, like the car was responding through water. I kept my face forward. I didn't want him to see me shaking. "Sir," I said, firm. "The ride is canceled. You need to get out." He smiled, small and private. "Cash," he said, like it was an offering. "You'll make more. Start driving." I shook my head. "No." He leaned slightly closer, just enough that his cologne cut through the leftover champagne smell. "You're working surge," he said, casually, as if he was just making conversation. "So, you're not going to want to waste time, right?" That was when I realized he'd been watching my phone screen, watching my app, watching my decisions. My eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Behind my car, another vehicle had pulled up too close enough that the headlights flooded my back window. Then, the headlights flashed in a pattern. Not random, a rhythm. 1, 2. Pause. 1. The man's smile widened like he'd received a text. My throat tightened. I couldn't make myself breathe deep. I forced air in shallow sips. "Who are you waiting for?" I asked. Even though I already knew the answer was going to be worse than silence. He nodded toward the road ahead. "Turn off here," he said. "Dark access road. Avoid police. Faster." I looked where he gestured. The access road was real. One of those side lanes that looked like it belonged to delivery trucks and bad decisions. It was darker, less crowded, no barricades, no eyes. He wasn't giving me directions to help me. He was guiding me away from witnesses. And the ride cancel suddenly made sense. If the app was out of it, there was no digital trail, no name, no complaint button. Just me and a stranger in my back seat. I made myself speak in a normal tone, like I hadn't just felt my life shift. "I'm not going that way," he exhaled through his nose. "Don't make this loud." The calmness in his voice did something to my nervous system. It wasn't a threat screamed in anger. It was a threat delivered like a schedule. At the next red light, I saw movement ahead. Someone stepping off the curb, positioning at the edge of my lane. Not crossing normally, not hurrying, just drifting into a spot where a car would have to slow, hesitate, choose. 2 people, 2 cars, a moving pin, a canceled ride, A wrong car that was never an accident. I made my decision fast because I could feel my brain trying to freeze. I hit my hazards. The blinkers snapped on, bright and frantic. I laid on the horn, long, ugly blasts that cut through the fireworks and turned heads. I raised my voice like I was announcing it to the whole street. "I'm live on dashcam," I said, loud enough that people outside looked toward my windows. "This car is recording." The man behind me shifted, his confidence cracking for half a second. He didn't like attention. He didn't like witnesses. I didn't give him time to recover. I turned my wheel and pushed toward the nearest police barricade where the flashing lights washed the street in red and blue. He leaned forward hard. "Don't," he said. I didn't answer, just drove. He grabbed for my seatbelt strap from behind. Not my neck, not my arm, the belt. Like he knew if he pulled it tight enough, I'd lose control without leaving marks. My stomach dropped. My hands went cold. I yanked the wheel left on instinct. The car bumped a barricade cone with a hollow thunk that made the whole vehicle shudder. The horn kept blaring because my palms stayed pressed to it. My hazards flashed like a distress signal. The man cursed, quiet, sharp, and his grip tightened for a second, trying to anchor me in place. I did the only thing I could think of that guaranteed noise. I hit the panic button. The car alarm erupted instantly. A shriek layered over fireworks and music, impossible to ignore up close. Heads turned. A couple of officers looked over, then started moving toward my driver's side door. I ripped my belt free, shoved the door open, and got out screaming. Not words, not a speech, just raw sound that made people flinch and look. Cold air hit my face. My legs nearly gave out, but I stumbled forward, hands up, toward the barricade lights. Behind me, the rear door flew open. The man sprinted into the crowd, fast and clean, disappearing between bodies like he'd practiced it. I caught one glimpse of the person ahead, the one who'd been drifting into my lane, and then they were gone too, swallowed by the chaos as if they'd never stepped off the curb at all. The officers pulled me behind the barricade and kept asking simple questions in calm voices, like they were trying to hold me steady by the edges. I gave my name. I gave the location. I pointed at my car like it was the scene of a crime I didn't want to touch. They took my statement while fireworks still went off overhead, bright bursts that made the whole thing feel unreal. One officer walked me back to the dashcam and had me confirm the red dot. I handed over the footage without arguing. I didn't want to keep it. I didn't want to own it. They searched the area for a few minutes, but the crowd was too thick. Too many silver dresses, too many dark jackets, too many places to disappear. I ended my shift right there. I drove home shaking, double-checking my locks at every light, watching every car behind me like it was the same one. 2 days later, when I opened my dashcam files, the folder was intact. The date was there, the timestamp was there, but the 12 minutes after midnight were just missing. No corruption warning, no broken file, no explanation. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourself out there, especially on nights when everyone thinks the noise makes them invisible. Stay safe.